Excellent.
Right. Well, way to be late early or early late, early late, whatever.
It's all about expectations. How's it going? Good morning.
Good morning, Hamilton and Michael of Genghis Tron. It's wonderful to talk to you. Thank you for taking the time. And it is morning. I 9 o'clock in the morning. I just put my kid on the school bus, so
Nice.
so thank you guys. It's my,
Good
my
news.
morning coffee.
That's how we roll.
It's
Indeed.
great. You know what, man? I have been trying to coordinate interviews in the afternoon, and it's terrible. But you get it done in the morning. It's nice. It's
Yeah,
nice. Um,
I like mornings. I'd say
Thank you.
most of my contributions to Dream Weapon were written between like 5 and 9 in the morning.
my most productive hours as
Yeah.
well. Yeah. How? Okay. Why 5 in the morning?
I'm just um, I'm just tired at the end of the day. I like to wake up early, and yeah, the morning is like the quiet time before I start work, before I do anything, that I tend to have the most energy.
It's
So
also this also happens to be when I get the most emails from Hamilton.
yeah, that's right.
Well,
Yeah,
that's productivity, right? That
Yeah.
counts.
it's a lot of emails in this band. At least a lot of emails underlying this album, which was
Right.
done remotely. So many
Yeah.
emails.
Right. Well, that's yeah. Of course, of course, that will come up. Of course, that's something I want to talk about. Sort of writing
Mm.
separate in a pandemic. Blah blah blah. As if nobody's tired of talking about a pandemic. Um, but first, I kind of wanted to get the timeline on the songs. Is when did you guys actually start writing? When did you realize you were writing an album? When did you realize that album was a Genghis Tron album? And so on. Did you ever stop writing?
Uh, I can answer the last question first, which is we always realized and knew that whatever we were writing would be a Genghis Tron album.
Mhm.
Um, but it just took us a while to get to a place where we got to your second question, which is, oh, we have like an album cooking here, and this is actually good. Um, and so, you know, we never broke up, of course. It was a true hiatus, but we did take a very extended break where Hamilton and I were just kind of became friends, and we were always talking about doing music again. And then every once in a while, we would send each other ideas and gain some momentum, but then it would fizzle out. And then that kind of happened a bunch of times over the years. And we actually amassed like a lot of little snippets of different ideas. Um, Almost all of which never made it onto this album. But then in 2018 is when things finally clicked, and like the song that became Alone in the Heart of the Light, like Hamilton showed me like the main sort of synth riff from that song, and I just thought it was super cool. And then I started building some chords on it, and then Hamilton did a drum beat, and then like a couple months later, I came up with like the beginning part of that song, which is like all sort of more electronic. And then before we knew it, we were like, whoa, this is like. And then we hung out in person like a month after that and wrote the last third of the song. And then before we knew it, we were like, oh, we have like a 7.5 minute song that like kind of makes sense and takes you on a voyage and has all these different parts, but all works together. And that was when we were like, okay, we actually wrote a demo of a song. And then from there, we kind of like kept our heads down and just kept trying to write music for the next 2 years. So I'd say most of the album was written before the pandemic actually hit. I think we were basically just working on vocals and coordinating with Nick playing drums and stuff, and doing sort of finishing touches and getting everything ready to go record it with Kurt at God City. Most of the writing was already done.
Hmm. And what was it about these songs that to you guys needed a live drummer? And can you tell me about bringing Nick in, and how did you know Nick, and how did that all work out?
We made the drummer decision. I mean, if you can call it a decision. I mean, I'll put it this way. We wanted a drummer. Certainly I wanted a drummer long before any of these songs existed. I think as early as the touring phase of Board Up the House, which would have been 2008, 2009. I think like at some point on that tour, it's like I don't know. We felt like we'd gotten better as a band. We were more stoked on our songs than we ever had been. Our live show was getting better, and we were just like, why are we still not playing with a drummer? Like when we started with Genghis Tron, we weren't like, let's create a drum machine band. It was just that Michael and I wanted to write songs together. We didn't know any drummers, so we just programmed the drums. And anyway, I could talk about this for 10 minutes, but
Do please. No, please. I remember seeing you guys in like 2005, 2006
Okay.
with the drum
Awesome.
machine. And
Awesome.
I mean, it was, it
Do you
was,
remember what show that was?
what's that?
Do you remember where that show was?
Europa in Brooklyn.
Oh, cool.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, like, so, I think a lot of people, a lot of people like think of us as a drum machine band, or that, like the word like cyber grind or whatever, these subgenres that we're honestly not familiar with.
So many.
Like, thrown around a lot. But it wasn't like, it just came about from the start. Drum programming was like, out of necessity. And, and of course, there was always, it was like a duality. Like, I would program the fakes, or I would program the realistic sounding,
Fake live drums.
Live drums. Mm-hmm. That was all me. And Michael would do all of the more like, frankly, the more interesting, electronic, sounding, obviously sampled percussion that's not supposed to sound like live drums. We always wanted that to be part of the music, but my half, the fake live drums, were more just out of necessity. And so after, finishing our second album, Board Up the House, we were like, I don't know, I just felt strongly. I love drums. It's like, I kind of wish I had played drums when I was younger. I often, when I write Genghis Tron songs, like, I write drum beats before anything else. I just love drums, and I've thought from pretty early on, like, man, it would just be better to have an awesome drummer than for me to continue to like try to make these sample drums sound cool. And so yeah, and I think by the time we were touring for Board Up the House, we're like, I think the next album we could do it. Like, by this time we could find a good drummer. By then we had met good drummers, what the band was doing a little better, etc. But then we went on hiatus. And but all during the hiatus, I felt strongly that if we were to ever come back and make another album, which we wanted to do, that it should have a live drummer. Just a live drummer can just bring a whole different human energy to it. As much fun as I have writing drum patterns, I knew that an actual drummer would be able to improve on that and do something that's even better. And so that whole decision, I'm saying all this to say that whole decision was made, at least from my perspective, a long time before we started working on any of these songs. And as far as Nick,
you have 3 minutes left in your 10-minute answers.
Yeah. So, and as far as Nick
Stopwatch.
goes, I saw Nick play drums for the first time, I think in 2017 with Sumac, when I lived in Berkeley, California. And I was just so blown away. I thought he was amazing. And at some point after that, I said to Michael, this guy's awesome. He would be a really good fit. And Kurt Ballou, then when we told Kurt that we were getting serious about actually doing this album and that we wanted to work with the drummer, Kurt introduced us to Nick. We sent him a couple demos and he said yes. So that's the story. So he was the first person. He was like our number one sort of pick. If we could work with anyone, it would be him. And he said yes, so we didn't have to think
just
about who would be number two.
Yeah.
Give credit to like Hamilton's, being modest, but like Hamilton does write really sick drum riffs through programming. And so it was cool to work with Nick because, like, I mean, I don't know what preconceptions he had about our band before we talked to him, but I got the impression that he thought we were, just like a crazy digital grindcore band or something, which I guess we were. And, but then when he heard the demos, I mean, he told us, he was like, these drum patterns are sick. Like, I'd be stoked to play this drum beat. So that was a cool experience for me to live vicariously through Hamilton because he was the one who wrote them. And then it was also cool because like Nick was very faithful to some of the drum programming that we had started with. And he was like, this beat is great. I just don't want to stop playing it. I just want to play it the whole song. And for other songs, I don't want to like downplay what Nick did, because he did
Right.
he did rewrite a bunch of parts and
Yeah.
he made it all his own. But it was a cool process to like see him sort of take, you know, what was a cool drum beat, but that sounded kind of flat and was obviously programmed, and to like just play the shit out of it on the album. So that was cool.
Yeah, yeah. He added, even for the songs where he was pretty faithful to the programming that I wrote. Like for every song, he added like crazy flourishes and fills and changes that were just like just took it to the next level. And then there were songs like "Alone in the Heart of the Light" where he basically like reconstructed the entire song as that we had started with and came up with like
Well,
totally
the
fresh patterns.
structure was the same, with the drum pattern change.
Right. Totally, yeah, exactly. Like rebuilt the drum pattern like in a cool way. So yeah, it was awesome working with him.
He is a very good drummer. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a good pick. It's a good number one pick.
One thing I've forgotten to, or I haven't thought about in all these interviews we've done, is that the first time Nick sent us a recording of him playing one of the beats, it was like so surreal to have like the sick drummer Nick playing something that we had written on a beat that I had wrote, and playing it like even better than I could have imagined. It was like, yes, this is what I've wanted for like 15 years or however long. So it was great.
And obviously, you know, the vocalist change as well. You know, but something you said kind of caught my attention is you know, the dynamic between live sounding drums and the sort of obvious programmed beats and so on. I think, you know, earlier on, especially, you know, Dead Mountain Mouth and the EPs Cloak of Love, that's very separate, right? There, you know, but a lot of what seems to be happening on Dream Weapon is kind of bringing different elements together and adding that live drum sound on top of it. It seems like there's a lot. It's a lot more sort of congruous work, you know, between what you guys are writing. Do you feel that way about the songs as well?
Yeah, I do. And I basically agree with everything you said. I think what happened was, like at the outset, I figured, oh, you know, the electronic drums, like the, you know, the sample based programming, like that's part of our core sound. Like we want to have that. But then like the more we got into it, I was like, well, we have a live drummer. It just feels really weird to be like, no, like Nick's not going to play here. I'm going to like program 3 minutes of like bleeps and bloops instead. It just felt kind of like it wasn't really fitting with what we were doing. And plus there was so many synths on this album that like the synths were bringing the more electronic vibes than the drums were. And so instead we took the approach that you just talked about, which is like just layering on some industrial sounding drums kind of like on top of the live drums, and doing it in kind of a subtle way so that they add more atmosphere, but they're not like the focus of the percussive aspects of the song. And there's like a couple exceptions where it's just electronic drums on the album, but for the most part it's like all about Nick. And I don't know if, you know, in the future, I think another reason why that happened is that programming good electronic drums is extremely hard and time consuming. And I was like, I don't know how I did that back in the day. Like, I think I was through screen, like just like clicking samples in the back of the van for like, you know, a long time. And I think this time around, I was just more interested and excited about writing the synth parts and writing the melodies and finding the right synth sounds for different parts. That was more fun and made the music more exciting than being like, no, I gotta like reverse this hi-hat sample and then do like a volume fade down and like just do all this like sort of minute detailed programming is like a little tedious. So like, why do that when we have a live drummer? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a fair point.
Yeah.
And tell me about bringing Tony in on vocals.
Yeah, I could talk about this. So it was just like just a really fortuitous turn of events. So just as background, when Michael and I dove into writing these songs in 2018, Mookie was, our previous vocalist, Mookie was still like nominally on board. Like, and we were sharing our demos with him, and he probably heard the starts of 2 or 3 or 4 songs. I can't remember, but he was into them. He was into what we were doing. He was down to work on the album. And then, long story short, it's just like after about a year of writing, it was just only Michael and I had written stuff, and Mookie was really busy, and it just occurred to all three of us, like, he's not going to be able to do this. He's just not, he doesn't have the time, he doesn't have the energy, whatever it is. Like, so, Michael and I knew that writing a good Genghis Tron album was going to take a ton of time and effort, and like, we'd have to make it a priority in our lives. And so, Mookie sort of bowed out and just said, guys, you should do this without me. And, and he gave us his blessing to move on. So at that point, it's like late 2019, we have over half the album written. By that point, I had known Tony for about a year. I had moved to Detroit the year before that, and Kurt had introduced me to him just as a friend. I told Kurt I was looking to meet musicians in the Detroit area. And at that point, we weren't looking for a new vocalist. I just like wanted to meet people. And so I got to know Tony that way. And so we had become friends. We had hung out a couple times. And then when we started looking for a new vocalist, I think it was Kurt again, was like, you should ask Tony, like, he is a good singer. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot Tony's a singer. And so we just started talking. And at some point, Michael and I sent him a couple demos to see if he was interested in coming up with ideas. And he sent something back to us again for that same song, Alone in the Heart of the Light. And it was just, it really blew us away. Like, it totally wasn't what Michael or I were expecting, but after a couple of days of sitting with it, we both realized that it was something we really loved, and it surprised us. Tony was like, the first 2 minutes of that song, both Michael and I had envisioned it being like completely instrumental, but instead Tony put vocals on top of it. And it's like, until we heard his vocals there, we didn't realize that something was missing, that the song like needed something else. And that sort of started it. We just kept sending him demos, and he kept coming up with cool ideas. And so it's just sort of like, he sort of like fell into our laps. It was really, it was really fortunate. And he was the first, like with Nick, he was like the first and only person we explored working with on the vocal front. And sort of cool, because in my opinion, like, the stuff he was adding sounded new and fresh and like different, obviously different vocalists, but also like, coming to me, it comes from like a similar, I don't know, emotional space or something as some of the vocals on our previous albums, as far as like the non-screamed vocals, and it just sort of worked. So that's the story. Anything else I'm missing, Michael?
Just the fact that it was cool to work with people who are actually real musicians. Like,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Nick and Tony are like both, they're like real musicians. They like know stuff.
They've both like been in tons of bands. They play lots of instruments. Like,
Yeah,
Michael and I,
songwriting. I don't know. It was cool to go out of our little weird bubble where we like, I don't know, the way Hamilton and I write songs is very, very slow, and we don't know a lot of theory, and I don't know, we just like write stuff till it sounds good. And so to work with other people who are like, well, you could just, you could try this and that would make it better. We're like, oh yeah, okay, that's easy. That was cool.
Well, then tell me about
Back from like what was like sort of an external thing was like new.
Right.
yeah.
Well, then tell me about kind of building up the tracks then, because you mentioned before emails going back and forth, and you guys have this kind of, I would imagine that by now the two of you kind of have a shorthand, which is not to say a language going back and forth, between what works, what doesn't work, what about this you like, what about this you like. So not only bringing other people into that, but sort of building up these songs, right? If Alone in the Heart of the Light was kind of the first one to come together, was that sort of a model for you to follow, or something for you to work off, contrasting, maybe both?
Yeah, I would say there's like there's no set way that a song could come together. So there's no model, other than the model being like, we just send back and forth ideas until we have a full demo. It's like, that's the model. And then
that's not nothing.
Yeah, and then there also, for this album, there was also, we did a bunch of in-person sessions. I mean, we don't live in the same place, so that was what was challenging. But Hamilton would come visit me in New York, I think maybe 4 times over the time we were working on the album, for like long weekends and stuff. And we would get a lot done and make huge progress in person. So you kind of wonder if we just had a couple months without day jobs and just in the same room, like maybe we could write a whole album. I don't know, but I feel like it also takes time to like for the ideas to come, and you toss a lot of stuff out. So, but it was kind of crazy. Like I don't actually think the way we write songs has changed like literally at all since Dead Mountain Mouth, because I forget why I was doing this. I was like trying to find some old MP3 in my Gmail at some point, like a couple months ago or like a month ago. And I just got lost in like an old world of like old GENGHIS TRON emails. And like the kinds of emails that we would write to each other in like 2005 when we were writing Dead Mountain Mouth, they're like identical to the emails that I would write. Be like, hey, here's a 90-second piece of bullshit. Like, I kind of like this part, but these 3 things you have to like use your imagination, because like I just used a crappy like temporary sample. Oh, and then I'm thinking it could go into like this kind of stupid part, and then like, and of course every email would start, no disclaimers, but here are like 10 disclaimers.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Especially from me.
And then Hamilton would write back and be like, very politely would be like, well, I kind of think maybe there's some potential here, but to be honest, I'm not sure that, be like, okay, chuck that idea. Or I'd be like, yo, dude, this is sick. Like, this is awesome. We should totally build around this, And then at that point, either I would keep working on it. And of course, it could start the reverse way. Like Hamilton could be sending me something, and then either that person would keep working on it, or you pass the file off to the other person. Or in the case of this album, like a lot of times Hamilton would send a drum beat that I thought was super cool. And then I'd be like, can you send me the drum beat? And maybe I can like add some melodies to it. And then that was how songs started to sort of get fleshed out. But yeah, it's like just to sort of continue, like some songs are like super collaborative and we're like writing them really together and like writing the melodies together. Other songs, they'll be like, here's like the second half of an entire song. And then the other person's like, I like this, it's done. So every song is a little bit different in terms of the collaboration.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about exploring melody more? I mean, obviously GENGHIS TRON was never without melody, but it's so much more prominent in these songs.
I can, and Hamilton can too, but you are like literally the first person who's ever asked us in an interview on this album about the melodies, which is cool. So I appreciate that, because for me, that is like the most interesting and kind of important aspect of the music. People get very, very focused on what genre is this, or why did you guys change your sound, or like what did you do on hiatus, and like no one really asks like how do you choose the melodies that you write, or like what. And the problem is, because this question has never been asked, I actually don't have an answer. Other than to say that like really, it's a really important thing for a melody, any melody on a GENGHIS TRON album, to feel, for me at least, like unique, not cheesy, teetering on the edge of both dark and comforting. And that's basically the main criteria, I would say. And I don't know how Hamilton writes his melodies, but I do a combination of just both playing on a synth with my hands, and then also programming MIDI and playing it on a loop and just messing around with the notes on a computer until the melody is developed in a way that I like it.
Yeah, I also do a lot of writing melodies in MIDI or on guitar, and very occasionally on an actual keyboard. But Michael's like the melody man. It's like he didn't write like literally every melody on the album, but for all of our music, like most of my favorite melodies have come from Michael.
Thank you.
And he's just he comes up with like I don't know, stuff that's like feels like comforting and familiar, but also a little weird and different, but mostly like comforting but dark at the same time. And it's just like, I appreciate you said that our music has never been without melody, because like, yeah, it's been, to me, I think it's been critical from the start. But what I think what's part of what sets this album apart is that it was almost like a production arrangement choice. Like we gave the melodies more room to breathe. Um, there's lots of there are lots of like stacked melodies on Board of the House or Dead Mountain Mouth, and on those albums, especially Dead Mountain Mouth, like the production is so intense that there are cool layers of little things in there that basically I don't think anyone will ever hear because it's like we just crammed so much into the songs. So I think that um, throughout writing this album, we tried to exercise restraint in giving the melodies more like room to shine, more space to breathe, and I think that that's so yeah, it's like the melodies have always been important, but I think we did a better job of allowing them to kind of come to the forefront on these songs.
What's
Did
your
you get
favorite?
Michael?
What's your favorite melody on the record?
My favorite melody on the record might be the first thing that came to mind was the chord, like the synth chords at the end of Pyrocene, when the song switches like into 4/4, and it's just like these um, I don't know. I just really love that chord progression. That was all Michael, and I also like
Those were known as the Terminator chords.
the Terminator chords. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Not to make our influences too obvious.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
That's one of my favorite melodies. I could go on. I like yeah, there are lots of melodies I like. Michael, what about you?
The one that popped out to me is on Single Black Point, which is like the second to last song. In the first half, there's like a weird like trumpet sound that's like do 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 do. And I don't even know how to sing the melody. I like wrote it and I don't even know how it goes. That one. Yeah, that one feels very unique, and I like that it is very, at least in my head, it's catchy and yet it's very hard for me to follow because it's repeating on a length that is different than the drum beat. So it like starts over at a time that makes sense and doesn't make sense. But yeah, I was pretty stoked when I wrote that melody, which we did together in the same room.
That's right.
And just like go back to like what Hamilton was saying about being, I mean, people say like we're mature now, but one mature decision that we did make was like this production approach that Hamilton was talking about, where back in the day, like our default assumption on every part of every song was Hamilton's got to be playing something on guitar and I have to be playing something on synth, because like I play synth and he plays guitar, and so you'd have these parts where there'd be like a fully developed guitar riff that like surely needed its moment to shine in the sun, but then there'd be like a synth also like just cluttering up the place, or vice versa. There'd be like a dope synth melody and then we'd be like, now we need to like write guitar chords over, and so I think we actually did talk about that at the beginning of writing Dream Up, and we were like, we need to like dispense with that whole approach. And so like a really good example of that is like, again, the first thing that we wrote for the album, which is the middle section of Alone in the Heart of the Light, where this like repeating synth melody comes in, which Hamilton wrote. I ended up programming the synth sound, but Hamilton wrote the melody. And like 15 years ago, we would have been like, okay, Hamilton, now you need to like write a harmony on guitar over that and like use a really distorted guitar tone and like drown out that dope synth melody. So we just were like, didn't do that,
Yeah. I was like, I'm okay to, maybe part of it's like a bit of a maturing, like an ego thing, being like, it's okay for there to be a 7.5 minute song and for no guitars to come in until the last 2 minutes. And then for those guitars to be like literally one note the entire song, just like a palm muted single note. And yeah, it's like, it was cool to take this different approach. And, I do think not to shit on our previous stuff too, because like I think that maximalist overload was like part of what made our previous albums, you know, it gave them character. And yeah, you know, I can sit here and complain that we can't hear all the you know, the listener will never hear all the detail of like our crazy arrangements, but like you could still hear most of everything, and it was insane and crazy. And I think that's part of what made it cool. But like we just wanted to, you know, we never like doing the same thing twice, and we really wanted to change it up this time. And just for us as listeners of our own stuff to be able to hear what we were doing, and to I think that gives you more room to do cool production too. Like you can make things warmer, and everything can breathe more. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I think to me, I always kind of equate that to patience. And I think it's, you know, I think Dream Weapon is definitely a more, you know, it has its intense moments, but it's definitely a more kind of patient album. It lets parts breathe. It lets melodies breathe. It you know, it has its driving sort of like, you know, more intense parts and stuff. But it's overall it seems like your focus is on letting the songs kind of do what they want to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And I also just think it's like, not to go back to the discussion that I'm sick of having with everybody about like our sound changing or whatever, but like it just would have been very weird if we wrote an album that was like spazzy hardcore with like electronic breakdowns like in 2021. I don't know, like with like parts that lasted 20 seconds. Like it's just not, one, I wouldn't know how to go about writing a song like that in a way that didn't sound cheesy to me at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And two, it's just like, I mean, I love our old albums. I'm not trying to like diss them or anything. Like I'm super proud of them, and like I'm stoked that people are into them. And you know, the fact that so many people were disappointed that it didn't sound like the old stuff made me feel good in a way, because it made me feel like people liked our old stuff. But just would have, it would have felt very artificial and not genuine to me if we tried to write like, I use the phrase spazzy hardcore, whatever, mathcore type stuff. I don't know. Maybe we'll do that in the future. Like it'll feel like the right thing to do, or it'll come to us. But even then, I think it would be something different than our old stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think off.
I could see things like getting abrasive again, but it wouldn't be in that way, I think. Yeah, I mean, whatever. It's like we it has to be interesting to us, you know. It's like That's why we came back. It's why we came out of hibernation, because we felt like we had something to say and we were fucking ready to do it. And you know, that'll be the same thing for the next album. You know, we'll do something when we feel we've got like something fresh that we're excited about. Though I don't think it'll take 13 years. It won't take 13 years.
Hamilton and I are hanging out next weekend, actually, in person.
Oh yeah, and I can say, breaking news on the obelisk. You know, how Michael talked about that, like how our songwriting process hasn't changed, and really, and like, you know, discovering all those old emails, and how sometimes there would be the gold mine where someone would write back like, oh my god, this fucking rules, this is it. Well, we are already there. We are working on the first, what I know will be a song on the next album. Like we have reached that threshold with something where it's like, oh yeah, this is going to be a song. So that feels exciting to me, because it's like, to me, it means we're already like on the way to the next one.
Well, okay. Yeah. Breaking news.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, I guess I did. It's true. I heard it here first. Okay. Well, what's exciting about the new thing?
It's something that Michael did, and it's just like, it's got some sick Michael melodies. It's also, hello, Olive.
Oh my goodness. Hold up, Olive. Let me see Olive. How old is Olive?
Olive's almost 2.
Oh my goodness. Hi, Olive. You are lovely. Hi.
Hi, Olive.
Oh.
Okay, I'm gonna go on mute for just a second.
Yeah. Sure. Man, that's the best age. Not quite 2. Give me like 18 months to 2 years. That's
I think that's where she is. I think she's like 18 months, something like that.
That's yeah. If once you get to walking, then it's
Yeah.
like then it's all downhill.
I'm kidless, so I don't know yet. If
My
I ever
son
know.
my son is 3.5 this month.
Okay.
It's a nightmare. But anyway,
Well, I'll say more about what I like about this thing that Michael did.
Please.
It's just yeah, like it's kind of got so many things that I like. Like first off, it's a little different than anything. It sounds like it's an outgrowth of where we were on Dream Weapon, but it's a little different. It's a little darker. Who knows where it'll end up by the time we finish it, but it's got a little bit of an industrial darkness to it. It's got this weird thing halfway through where the beat slips in a way that you don't expect. And it's got some totally sick Michael Sochynsky melodies. So I'm just excited to turn it into a song.
that sounds like a Genghis Tron song. Yeah. All right.
It does.
Yeah.
It totally sounds like Genghis. It totally sounds like Genghis Tron, and yet it's like not quite like any of the other songs we have. So
That also
that's
sounds like
starting.
Genghis Tron.
It's a good starting point.
Yeah.
Take a little Aphex Twin, some Pig Destroyer, mash it all up, done.
Yeah.
Boom.
It's got
That's how the magic happens. Thank you guys. I'm gonna let you go. I think actually
Okay.
that should do it. Michael and Hamilton, Genghis Tron. Congratulations on the record. It is
Thank you.
it's my favorite album that I've heard this year. So thank you.
Wow, thanks,
for that.
JJ. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
I'm gonna stop recording. Hang on a second.
Okay.